Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Holosun 509 at 10,000 rounds. 509 is an all-enclosed optic from Holosun, the first one that they've offered, completely enclosed, which is something that people want on a handgun for whatever reason, and we'll get into that. Because it's relatively new, I wanted to accelerate their life cycle as much as I could and get the round count up high. If you look on the channel, or you've already seen it, I did a 2,000 round initial review, but 2,000 rounds in the grand scheme of things is nothing for their overall surface of what's going to be considered a serious carry or duty optic. It already had a glowing recommendation for me from that video. I think it's a very good competitive optic out there for those who prefer an enclosed reticle to prevent some of those environmental concerns we have for optic malfunctions. But is it going to be able to last long term? My review process is tough. There are only a few optics that have made it past 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 rounds. In fact, that number is still in the single digits. And I don't want to move the goalposts around on how tough I am on an optic or how critical I am of features, just so some optics from whatever manufacturer will be able to survive the process. Always controversial, of course, is the drop testing. People say, I'm not going to drop my gun. Yeah, well, the drop test is not necessarily designed to replicate the dropping of a firearm, and I think I say this in every video, but to replicate stress on the firearm from taking a tumble. For law enforcement, if it's in your holster and you're rolling around with a suspect on the ground, optics on duty have been broken that way. So if an optic can survive a drop test, it's probably going to survive whatever the job can throw at you. For concealed carry, the concerns might not be as high. You may not be worried about the durability that an optic can survive multiple drops on a hard surface like concrete or asphalt. But wouldn't it be nice to know that your chosen duty optic, or chosen, I should say, carry optic, carry conceal optic, can handle that kind of abuse? And of course, this is just one man's opinion, but usually multiple sample sizes. So with the 509, I haven't had to get a second one because I haven't broken the first one. So we're at 10,000 rounds and the optic is still functional. Now with the 509T, I'm getting a titanium body optic that has its own, unfortunately, proprietary footprint. A lot of people want it to be able to mount to whatever footprint they have. That's just not an option because of the nature of an enclosed optic, where the screws got to go, how the mounting is going to occur versus your your open optics that you see, like the RMR footprint, the most venerable footprint. Almost quote-unquote unofficial industry standard is the RMR footprint. You can mount a 509 to an RMR footprint, but it requires a special plate. It's not something you're going to be able to direct mount just based on, like I said, the nature of where the screws got to go is basically what breaks that down. I'm getting an enclosed optic with a 2 MOA reticle and also has a 32 MOA ring. Now you can use either optic. You can just use the dot, or you can just use the circle, or you can use both. Or you can use, well, you can't use neither because that would kind of defeat the entire purpose of the optic. It's powered by a 1632 battery, side access. I don't have to take the optic off the gun to replace the battery, and it also has the ability to charge with the sun, solar power. So you can cycle through those options as well, where you want to take your power from. I personally like to run mine off of battery only, but even running off battery only, I'm going to get a minimum of 10,000 hours of battery life, and if you're good at quick math, that's more than a year, which is what I prefer to be the standard for any kind of carry optic, be it duty carry or personal carry. I don't want to have to change my battery multiple times a year. Even if I only change my battery 2 times a year, I feel like that's a failing in design. I feel like the optic should stay powered up as long as possible. The RMR kind of set the standard for that. We saw a year plus battery life out of the Type 1 and the Type 2 RMR. So I kind of expect, and this is just me being spoiled by that battery feature, I kind of expect other optics to offer the same performance. One cool thing about the Holosun, the 509, but some of their other optics as well, is it offers that great battery performance now in a smaller battery. We've gotten away from the 2032 to the 1632 to allow that side access. And when it comes to the notch filter, that blue tint you see, the notch filter is not as noticeable on the 509 or other Holosun products as it is in, say, the RMR. If you're not aware, that blue filter prevents certain, I guess, frequencies of light to transfer as easily through the lens, which means I don't have to brighten up the reticle as much for you to see the dot in bright sunlight or other bright lighting conditions, which prolongs your battery life. So people who complain about blue tint in their optics, it's there for a reason, and it keeps you from having to change your batteries frequently. You look at some of the magnified optics out there that have lit reticle options, their battery lives are dismal compared to optics that have notch filters. And the reason being, most people aren't comfortable having a notch filter in a magnified optic like a 1 to 10, 2 to 10, 3 to 15, whatever. And the handgun and the smaller optics has just kind of become a standard for dedicated electronic options that don't have etched reticles or other aiming methods in them. But the blue tint is a good thing. It does prolong your battery life, but not all notch filters are created equal in the way that Holosun approaches their technology and the way that they do, well, their lighting, if you will. They didn't have to or didn't feel necessary to put in such an extreme or dark or noticeable notch filter as we see with some other optics, and we still get 10,000 hours on the conservative side of battery life just running on battery only. But if you run battery and solar power, you're looking at 50,000, maybe even more hours of battery life. Button adjustments are also the programming feature. 2 little buttons right here. I got 1 MOA adjustment. So one complaint I've had about Holosuns has been the size of the adjustment screw. That still bothers me 10,000 rounds later on the 509. You need a special tool. God, don't lose that. I did get spoiled by some of the other optics where if I needed to make an adjustment, I could just pick up an empty casing, a 223 or 9mm off the deck, and use that as my little wrench, so I didn't have to keep up with yet another tool. But it's a small issue. Just carry a small screwdriver with you. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use a dime or a nickel or any currency that I'm aware of in coin form that will fit in that little slot and allow you to be able to make those adjustments. 10,000 rounds. You'll know the drop test is probably one of the most extreme things I do. After the initial 2,000 round review process, I maintain my standard testing procedure, which is extreme heat, extreme cold, a drop test from shoulder height on a hard surface every 500 rounds, and single hand manipulations, because that's something that we do. If I need to shoot one-handed and I have a malfunction, or if I need to manipulate the slide for any reason and my other hand's not available, I can manipulate off of an object. That's something the optic needs to be able to handle, especially in law enforcement, because one-handed, sport hand only, primary hand only shooting is something that's taught repetitively in law enforcement because it's come up in the past. And then, of course, the drop testing. A drop every 500 rounds. That's a lot of drops for 10,000 rounds, and the 509 has survived every single one of them. So over 10,000 rounds, 20 drops on a hard surface, and the 509 is still ticking, although it did have a little bit of delamination and chipping on the rear lens, and of course I've got a little bit of crack on the solar panel and some overall marring on the aesthetic finish of the optic. But other than that, it remains functional, it remains usable, it remains accurate. The first 5-round group I ever fired on this gun for record, you saw from the original video. Show you that right now. Here's my 5-round group, very first 5-round group I ever did for record. And here is another 5-round group fired after the last drop test at the 10,000 round count. So, 0 maintained. I think we can agree that that 0 has been maintained. My overall impressions of the 509 have not changed. I think it is probably the best choice if you want an enclosed optic on a duty handgun. Something that comes up, well, it's made in China. Yeah, whatever you're watching this on was probably made in China too. I'm not so jingoistic that I believe that only Americans can make good products. If America makes a better optic, that's probably where I'm going to go, because I go where the quality is. However, just because an optic comes from a foreign country, aim point, does not mean it cannot be high quality and well made. We've seen from Holosun that the longer Holosun exists, the better their optics continue to get, and the price points are very, very reasonable. Right now, there aren't a whole lot of choices in the enclosed optic market, not serious choices when it comes to mounting on a handgun. 509 has a great price, it has excellent features, it's durable, it's got holster compatibility with the RDS holsters from Safariland, as well as the older DRO model, or DO models, I should say. And concealment, not going to be a big deal. One of the big concerns we've seen with some other enclosed optics out there is, oh, is that going to conceal well? The footprint is noticeably less on the 509 than, say, the Aimpoint Acro. So that might be something to assuage your concerns over concealability issues. I will say this, if you've been carrying concealed with an RMR or a Telepoint Pro, that thing's super tall, you'd have absolutely no problem carrying concealed with a 509. So the footprint is not so bulbous or gigantic that you can't carry and cover it up with a t-shirt or a button-up shirt or whatever. It's not going to needlessly print like some people are concerned with. So this video was basically just a 10,000 round update showing you guys what has taken place on the optic. One thing I would like to see now, having 10,000 rounds on it, and this is why even 2,000 rounds in review process may not be enough, is for them to bring out that rear ledge just a little bit to help better protect that rear glass, because it hit just right and was able to crack and kind of delaminate or flake, if you will, that rear lens. Not something I'm a huge fan of for obvious reasons. I think they can make a small change in design to help prevent that if that's something they're interested in doing. That would be my only real recommendation at this point. The MOS mounting system, I've had this mounted on an OEM Glock 17 Gen 4 MOS. Their mounting plate for the MOS is rock solid, made out of steel, which is what the plate should be made out of. Aluminum second, and then third, whatever the hell the MIM that Glock uses for their MOS plates is probably the worst mounting material you could possibly use for an optic, but Glock is going to continue to do it because that's just something that Glock's slow to change, like a lot of larger companies when it comes to making changes in their production line and their products. Is this a good duty optic? Yes, absolutely. Is this a good carry optic? Yes, absolutely. This is just a good optic. It's handgun specific, but there's no reason why you couldn't mount it on a rifle or submachine gun or something where you want a super tiny footprint. Battery access, changing batteries is going to be easy when you have to change the battery every year or maybe longer. I've been running this thing on almost the highest brightness setting possible since I got it. No issues whatsoever. Again, I haven't even had it a year yet, so I haven't not really tested that battery life, and that's why I'm giving you guys periodic updates on it. Next update you'll see on this gun will probably be 20,000 rounds. May not be there as quick. It may be a while before you see that one. I did spend a lot of dedicated time to get it to 10,000 rounds as quickly as I did because I wanted to have a larger sample size of performance to make a more assured recommendation for people who are interested in purchasing this optics for duty use or for personal carry. But my recommendation from the 2,000 round to the 10,000 round video remains the same. This is an excellent optic, and it's something that should seriously be considered if you absolutely have to have an enclosed emitter optic. I'm Eric Allen with Sage Dynamics. Training.